Equally illustrious in their accomplishments and very deep in their vision and commitment to this field are our two presenters here this evening, Paul Grogan and David Abramowitz. I'd like to invite Paul up here to make our first presentation for the evening. Paul Grogan is a gentleman that when he speaks, people stop and listen. He has quite an impressive resume. I have the opportunity to look at a lot of people's bios and putting together these kinds of programs. And Paul probably doesn't need much of an introduction in a crowd like this. But if there's anyone here who doesn't know Paul, he's currently president and CEO of the Boston Foundation. Earlier on in his career, he was vice president for government and community and public affairs at Harvard University. He was president and CEO of the Local Initiative Support Corporation, LISC, from 1986 to 1988. He served in local government under mayors Kevin White and Ray Flynn here. And Paul is one of the great thinkers on urban issues, a man of action. It's our pleasure to have him here tonight. Please give him a warm welcome.
Well, Peter, thank you very much for that very warm and flattering introduction. I've got to come to these meetings more often, I can tell. It is truly a delight to be here with you, with this important organization, recognizing these two individuals. And though most of my comments are going to be about Jack, it's also a great pleasure to participate in a ceremony honoring Vince O'Donnell, who made such a great contribution to the organization I ran for many years, the Local Initiative Support Corporation, and continues to do great work in the city. I, sadly for me, don't have the occasion of seeing Jack as frequently as I did, because back in the late 80s and early 90s, we were kind of going steady in our joint efforts to get enacted and then get made permanent the low-income housing tax credit. Of course, just based on the monumental achievements of Boston Capital under Jack's leadership, and he's been CEO for 39, soon to be 40 years. You know, the numbers are staggering, billions and billions in investment. I think something like 165,000 units under management. We talk about units, let's think about the people. That's probably north of 400,000 people. Jack's created his own little city of affordable housing, and for most of those individuals and families who had the opportunity to move into that housing, it was a big step up from the conditions they were in. So purely on growing this company and just having such incredible product, creating this city, this award would be more than deserved. But I think well beyond what he has done, his influence in this industry, and particularly his signal role in the low-income housing tax credit, really put it over the top. And it was just a tremendous, I mean, it was an arduous and difficult and scary time getting the credit enacted. It was only temporary when we first got it enacted, and then we fought a whole series of seemingly annual battles to get it extended. It lapsed a couple of times. It was really kind of a hair-raising time, but at the same time it was very satisfying, because we were able, at a time when the country really wasn't too inclined to be spending money on cities or housing, to get this incredible resource enacted, and then to see it become an even better program than we had imagined. I said to Jack earlier tonight, and we still have to worry about all these things and fight for them. You can't take anything for granted or be complacent. But I said, if we had said to each other in 1986, the low-income housing tax credit's still going to be here in 2013, it wouldn't have been a very credible statement. But that too is a tremendous credit to Jack. I ran the Local Initiative Support Corporation, which I think was the leading nonprofit advocate for the low-income housing tax credit, and Jack was the head of the private sector Affordable Housing Tax Credit Coalition, and so we kind of leaders of the private and nonprofit sectors. And what was so great about Jack and distinguished him from many of his colleagues on the private side, on the for-profit side, is he just had a keen understanding not only the value of nonprofit organizations in this field, build community development organizations. But the fact that we could do some politics that the private sector couldn't do. And of course the reverse was true as well. And he was just utterly insightful about that. And as a result, we were able to work very, very closely and very pragmatically over many years to kind of maximize what we each could bring to the party. And the result was, I think, a very implausible thing. The enactment in 1986, think of what was going on in 1986, who was in power, of the low-income housing tax credit, a tremendous bipartisan support that we built for it. And so I think it's fair to say the low-income housing tax credit probably would not have enacted and certainly would not be in existence now if it weren't for Jack and his just unflagging and extremely shrewd and indefatigable work on behalf of this program. And so really the whole country owes a great deal to this gentleman, and that's why I was so thrilled that he was being recognized with the Vision Award this year. Jack Manning.
So I'd really like to meet the Jack Manning that Paul's been talking about. And I hope my wife heard this because I'm really not so bad after all. Paul, thank you so much. Your words meant a lot to me. And in fact, Paul is right. We did kind of go steady during those early stages of the LIHTC business. But if it weren't for Lisk and Bart Harvey at Enterprise and us primarily on the for-profit side, it was just a Herculean effort to create legislation where you had a Republican House and a Democratic Senate. What a surprise, right? We see a little of that now. And a Republican president, but we got it done. But I can tell you that Paul and I would spend anywhere between 2 and 3 days per week in Washington, because what you quickly learn is you don't come in and make your presentation to a senator or to a congressman or to their staff and think, and they nod and they say, yes, it's all very interesting, we agree, it sounds like a great idea, and then you go home. That doesn't work. You have to get back and you have to constantly reinforce and constantly stop by and say, I'm just in town and I wanted to say hello. And you don't even have to try to sell your program at that point, but it's the idea that you're always there. And so we had a schedule of rotation so that at least one of us was there almost every day. And as it turned out, we went through the sunset periods and all that sort of thing, and ultimately we succeeded in getting this very, very important program done. Now, to my fellow honoree, Vince O'Donnell, I don't know a more classic example of incredible public service, of dedication as Vince O'Donnell. I'm very, very honored to share this same podium with him. He's an extraordinary individual who's done so much for housing preservation and for people who are less fortunate than all of us. So again, I'm very, very grateful to have even the opportunities to share this podium with him. So when Peter called me to tell me that he was going to give me this award, and I'm very grateful to him for that, he had said to me, give some thought about what you want to say about where you think the industry is and what issues need to be discussed. And so where the industry is where we all know it to be. It's strong. It's doing very, very well. There's plenty of capital that's out there to be invested. It's clean. There have been no scandals whatsoever. It's the best example of public-private partnership in the country. But there are threats out there. And the threats that are out there relate, once again, back to the political world that we have spent a lot of time trying to work with, particularly with tax reform and with sequestration. And so the point I want to make tonight is that it's very important that all of us here who make a living involved in this business, that we work politically, because as Paul and I know from those years of experience in creating the program is that you have to have political relationships. You have to develop them with staff. You have to develop them with the members, and in particular the members of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. So I encourage you all to do one of the things that we do. Whenever we close a transaction, we send out a note to the congressman in that district or to the senator in that district. The note says how many units we're developing, how many jobs we're creating, how much money we're spending in their district, for example, and how, not least certainly, how people are now, that are not wealthy, are going to live in safe, decent, clean, affordable housing. And so we've gone about doing that, and we've done it because it's a good story to tell. And we also found that by doing so and inviting, never forget this, invite the members of Congress out to your groundbreaking. It pays huge dividends if they come and they see and touch and feel and can see the real value of what you have. So all of us need to make that pledge to ourselves and to this industry that we're going to do that. Because there's always something that comes up. And you know, for example, back in 1994, when during the second the second Clinton administration, and the House went back to the Republicans, a chairman named Bill Archer of the House Ways and Means Committee came in. Paul knows. And he said, I'm going to sunset this program. I'm going to wipe it out. We don't need it. We invited him out through people like Steve Ford and others who did business in Houston to come out and see some of the projects that we were doing. He came, he said nice things, but he still wanted to exit out. This is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. So what does that tell you? What it tells you is that we defeated it because we had other members, Republican members, on the House Ways and Means Committee that saw it differently. But if we hadn't taken that time, if we relaxed on our laurels and didn't take the time to bring some of these members in to see firsthand what we've created and why these people are happy and doing better as tenants and in life by living in these units, then it would have been, we could have been very easily phased out. So that's a really, really important message to keep with you at all times, is that our political relationships are relevant. They're very, very important. So I want to close with a story, and I thought long about whether I would tell this or not, but I'm going to. So you might remember, for those of us that were old enough to be in this business in 1998, 1999, Bill Clinton's last couple of years of being president, that the IRS all of a sudden went out and started auditing a wide swatch of tax credit limited partnerships. And they were disallowing the deferred portion of the development fee as going into basis. If they disallow that, obviously the credit comes down. The value that the investor thought they were getting no longer would be realized. And we couldn't stop the IRS from auditing and throwing these things out. There was nothing, there was no regulation, there was nothing that could stop them from doing that. It began to strangle the capital markets because this was a program that had been effective at that point for about well, really since it was made permanent in 1993, let's say 5 full years. Corporations were being very enthusiastic about it. And so we had a problem. And it was this audit with the IRS. So I called our late Senator Ted Kennedy, who's a family friend, and I said, here's our problem. We need to get regulations. Why regulations? Because if we have regulations, we can work with them. But if it's wide open and the IRS is out doing a sort of a gunshot at everything, then we're in trouble. So he said, let me think about this. Let me think about this. I'll call you back in an hour. The senator calls me back in an hour. He said, I want you down here at my house tomorrow morning at 8:30. We're going to go see the president about this. I said, the president? Okay. I think, wow, this is unbelievable. So I go to his house and we get in his car, and Teddy always had a black Portuguese water dog called Splash. And the dog went with him wherever he went, including to the White House. So we get into the van, we go to the White House, go to the West Wing, and he says to me, now, by the way, this is a bill signing. There was some amendment to a religious bill that he and Chris Dodd had put together. He said, so we're the only 2 senators there. There are a bunch of people behind that supported this, but the president will be signing it. Just sit there. So we go into the Oval Office. I go in with him. The Oval Office has 2 chairs this way and then the desk up here. And the president calls him up and Dodd up for the signing, where they hand out a pen for every letter of the president's name when he signs it. I got the dog by the leash. See how I'm dressed now? The dog starts to bark as soon as Teddy gets up behind the president to sign, and the dog is barking loudly, and Teddy says to me, put the dog on your lap. I look at him, I said, not in this suit. Am I going to put the dog on the lap? So Teddy said he yells to the dog, and the dog takes it as command. The dog jumps into my lap. I'm sitting there in the Oval Office. They're signing this. I got a dog on my lap. And I'm thinking, I hope this is not symbolic of where we're going to go when this is over. So as it turns out, Everybody leaves, the signature's signing. Clinton's laughing because I got the dog on my lap. He says, I bet he's ruined your fancy suit and all this other stuff. And so he said, so what can I do for you? I said, well, Mr. President, we want regulations. This is the problem. He says, you want to be regulated? And I said, yeah. He said, well, why do you want to be regulated? I said, because then you have to hold hearings. And if you hold hearings, we can all make our case, and we can deal with whatever comes with us based upon what we have in our hand. He said, okay. He says, I understand. He said, but I can't call over to Larry Summers, who's the Secretary of the Treasury at that point, so because he's not supposed to do that. But Gene Sperling's about one floor up above. I'm going to call him right now. Go up and see him. He's our liaison between the two. So Teddy and I go up to Gene Sperling's office. We explain to Gene Sperling. He says, you want to be what? You want to be regulated? I said, yeah, because we want to go in and testify before Congress as to why we want to be able to bring the deferred portion of the development fee into basis. So he says, okay, don't worry, I can take care of it. It's totally reasonable. We like this program. And indeed, that is what happened. And indeed, Larry Summers came out and said, we want to hold hearings on this, and the IRS dropped their audits. And all the investors we had, thank God, were very happy with that outcome. So that's my message to you, is to remember that story. It's really important that we all work together to stay on top of this issue, because tax reform, while it's probably not likely to come in and take away our business, we can't assume that. We always have to assume the worst. And so I really, really encourage all of you to do that. We have a great story to tell, so let's tell it. It's important that we all do that. I want to thank Peter and Tom and everyone here at the NHRA for this award. It means a great deal to me, and I thank you all of you so much for coming here tonight.